Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Dreaming big is not just about imagining success or indulging in fantasies of achievement. It is a deep psychological necessity. It is the force that compels you to aim higher than your current position, to reach for something beyond what you can immediately grasp. Without a compelling vision of the future, a person stagnates. They become weak, aimless, and easily swayed by the challenges of life. The capacity to dream, to truly dream, demands responsibility. It demands that you confront the weight of your own potential and accept the price that must be paid for its realization. People fear this responsibility. They avoid it because to dream means to sacrifice. It means understanding that if you aim for something great, everything you do must be aligned toward that purpose. Every action, every thought, every moment must serve the ideal you have chosen. And when you truly commit to that, the world itself begins to shift around you. It is as if reality rearranges itself to aid those who are willing to bear the burden of a great dream. Yet, in the pursuit of something larger than yourself, you will inevitably encounter obstacles. Some will be external society, hardship, betrayal, but the greatest enemy is always internal. Doubt, fear, laziness. These are the forces that whisper in your mind, telling you to settle, to remain small, to abandon your vision in exchange for comfort. You must silence that voice, not through arrogance, not through blind self-confidence, but through trust. Trust in something beyond yourself. Because the truth is, no human being is strong enough to carry the weight of existence alone. There must be faith that the sacrifices you make are meaningful, that your suffering has purpose, that there is an underlying order to the chaos. And this is where trust in God becomes not just important, but essential. To believe in God is to believe that the struggle is not futile, that the difficulties are not merely obstacles but lessons shaping you into something greater than you were before. It is to believe that no matter how dark the road becomes, there is light ahead. This is not a passive faith. It is not the mere hope that things will turn out well without effort. It is an active trust, a trust that demands movement, action, discipline. It is the faith that if you strive forward with integrity and courage, doors will open. Not always the doors you expected, and often not in the way you imagined, but in the way that is necessary. You cannot afford to live a life of small ambition. You cannot afford to shrink away from the weight of existence. The highest calling of a human being is to take on the heaviest burden they can carry and move forward despite it. So dream boldly, knowing that the path will be treacherous. Trust in God, knowing that the hardship is not without meaning, and act as if your life depends on it, because in every significant way it does. Dreaming big is not merely an indulgence or a fleeting desire for success, it is an absolute necessity. It is the fundamental force that drives human beings forward, that propels them beyond their current limitations, and compels them to shape their existence into something greater. Without a compelling vision of the future, people stagnate. They become trapped in the monotony of the present, repeating the same patterns, weighed down by their own aimlessness. A person without a dream is like a ship without a destination, adrift, vulnerable to every storm, every obstacle, every external force that seeks to push them off course. When you refuse to dream big, what you are actually doing is denying yourself the possibility of transformation. You are choosing comfort over growth. And comfort, despite its temporary relief, is not a foundation for a meaningful existence. Human beings are not designed for passive contentment. We are creatures that thrive on progress, on movement, on the pursuit of something that transcends our immediate gratification. The moment you cease to aim at something beyond yourself, you begin to deteriorate. Your mind weakens, your spirit dulls, and your life shrinks into something far smaller than it could be. People avoid dreaming big because they are terrified of what it demands. A significant dream requires sacrifice. It forces you to confront your inadequacies, to face the terrifying realization that you are not yet who you need to be in order to achieve what you desire. That realization is painful, but it is necessary, because once you accept it, you are left with two choices: retreat into mediocrity or step forward into the unknown, willingly taking on the responsibility of your own potential. To dream big is to invite struggle, but it is also to invite meaning. There is no fulfillment in the pursuit of small, inconsequential goals. The human soul is not nourished by safety, it is nourished by challenge, by purpose, by the deep intrinsic knowledge that what you are doing matters. And meaning is not something you simply stumble upon. It is something you create through the pursuit of something higher, something noble, something worth suffering for. This is why a person must aim beyond what they currently are. You do not dream big because you are already great. You dream big because you are not yet who you could be. The dream is not just a destination, it is a guide, a call to action, a force that compels you to grow. And as you move toward it, you change. You become stronger, wiser, more disciplined. You forge yourself into something capable of carrying the weight of a meaningful existence. If you refuse to dream big, you are not avoiding suffering, you are simply choosing a different kind of suffering. The suffering of regret, of wasted potential, of a life lived in the shadow of what could have been. That is a far worse fate than the struggle required to reach something extraordinary. Choose to dream, not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. Responsibility is the price of great ambition. This is a fundamental truth that many people try to avoid, often at great personal cost. To aspire towards something meaningful, something truly significant, you must be willing to bear the immense weight that comes with it. You cannot separate ambition from responsibility because the two are inextricably linked. The higher you aim, the heavier the burden you must carry. This is why people often reject ambition, why they refuse to take on the challenge of striving for something great. It is not because they lack the capability, but because they fear the responsibility. They fear the sacrifices, the discipline, the inevitable failures that come with pursuing something truly worthwhile. To take responsibility means to voluntarily confront the difficulties of existence, to acknowledge that if something is not as it should be, you have the power and the obligation to change it. That is a terrifying realization because it strips away the comfort of excuses. It leaves you with no one to blame but yourself if you fall short. But here's the brutal truth: if you refuse responsibility, you do not avoid suffering. You simply exchange one form of suffering for another. The suffering of discipline, effort, and sacrifice is difficult, but it is purposeful. It forges you into something stronger, more capable. The suffering of avoidance, on the other hand, the suffering of a life lived below your potential, is far worse. It is the suffering of regret, of insignificance, of watching others achieve what you could have if only you had been willing to pay the price. There is no such thing as effortless success. Every truly successful person, every individual who has accomplished something meaningful, has borne a tremendous responsibility to get there. They have accepted the long hours, the failures, the loneliness, the immense pressure. They have embraced the weight of expectation both from themselves and from the world. And here's the paradox: responsibility, though difficult, is what gives life meaning. The heaviest burden you can carry is also the very thing that makes the struggle worthwhile. If you want to achieve something great, start by taking on the highest responsibility you can manage. Take ownership of your choices, your actions, your discipline. Stop waiting for the world to hand you something you haven't earned. Stop blaming external forces for your circumstances. Instead, ask yourself, what can I do right now to move closer to my goal? Then do it relentlessly, unapologetically. Because the alternative is mediocrity. The alternative is drifting through life without purpose, resenting those who have what you do not, failing to recognize that their success is not a matter of luck but of burden bearing. If you want something extraordinary, you must be willing to carry the weight that comes with it. There is no shortcut. There is only responsibility, and through it, transformation. The greatest obstacles you will ever face are not the ones imposed by society, by circumstance, or by other people. They are the ones that exist within you. It is not the external world that holds you back as much as your own fears, doubts, and weaknesses. And this is a deeply unsettling truth, because it means that in the end you are your own greatest enemy. If you fail, it is not merely because the world is unfair, though it often is. It is because somewhere along the way you allowed your own limitations to defeat you. This is not to say that external obstacles don't exist. Of course they do. Life is full of challenges, economic hardship, social constraints, health issues, and all manner of unpredictable tragedies. But what separates those who succeed from those who don't is not the absence of these obstacles. It is their ability to overcome them despite the internal resistance that tells them they can't. Because that voice, the one that whispers, "You're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not strong enough," voice is the real enemy. Fear is one of the most insidious of these internal obstacles. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of stepping outside the comfort of the known. People often convince themselves that they are trapped by their circumstances, but in reality, they are trapped by their fear of change. They prefer a miserable certainty over an uncertain possibility. They tell themselves they want a better life, but when faced with the actual risk of striving for it, they retreat. They make excuses, they rationalize, they shift blame. Anything to avoid admitting that the real battle is taking place within them. Then there's self-doubt. The deeply ingrained belief that you are not capable, that your ambitions are beyond your reach. And here's the irony most of the time, that belief is not even based on reality. It is the result of years of internalized criticism, of negative reinforcement, of listening to voices that never wanted you to rise in the first place. And the real tragedy, the more you listen to that doubt, the more it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't try, so you don't succeed. You don't succeed, so you believe you never could have. And on it goes. Laziness, too, is an internal enemy, and not just laziness in the traditional sense, not just an unwillingness to work hard, but an unwillingness to confront the difficult truths about yourself. An unwillingness to push through discomfort. People avoid struggle because it's painful. But the irony is that avoiding struggle leads to an even worse kind of suffering, the suffering of stagnation, of watching your potential waste away. If you truly want to achieve something meaningful, you must turn inward. You must identify the thoughts, habits, and beliefs that are holding you back. You must confront them, wrestle with them, and defeat them. No one else can do this for you. The world is already full of challenges. You don't need to be your own worst enemy. Overcome yourself first, and then nothing outside of you will have the power to stop you. Trust in something beyond yourself, because if you don't, you will crumble under the weight of your own limitations. Human beings are not designed to bear the full burden of existence alone. The world is too complex, too unpredictable, too filled with suffering for any one person to navigate it entirely through their own strength. If you insist on relying solely on yourself, on your intellect, your willpower, your emotions, you will inevitably reach a point where you collapse under the pressure. Because no matter how strong you are, there will come a time when you are not strong enough. People often think they can control everything. They assume that through sheer effort, through meticulous planning, through careful risk management, they can dictate the course of their lives. But this is an illusion. Chaos is real. Unexpected tragedy is real. You can be the most competent, disciplined, intelligent person in the world, and still one day something will happen that completely upends your life. And in that moment, if all you have is yourself, if all you trust is your own ability, you will have nowhere to turn. This is why faith is not just an abstract idea or a relic of the past, it is a psychological necessity. You must trust in something beyond yourself, whether that be God, a higher moral order, or the belief that existence itself is meaningful. You must believe that your suffering is not random, that your struggles are not pointless, that there is something guiding you, shaping you, making the pain worthwhile. Because if you don't believe that, then why continue? If life is nothing but suffering and chaos, then despair is the only logical conclusion. But here's the truth. Those who endure, those who overcome, those who build meaningful lives, they do so because they trust in something greater. They trust that their sacrifices will matter. They trust that the hardships they face are not arbitrary, but transformative. They trust that if they continue to act with integrity, if they continue to strive forward with courage, the right doors will open, even if they do not yet see them. Trust in something beyond yourself does not mean passivity. It does not mean sitting idly by and hoping things will improve on their own. That is not faith, that is wishful thinking. True faith is active. It is the decision to move forward even when you cannot see the whole path. It is the discipline to do what is right, even when there is no immediate reward. It is the strength to bear the burden of existence with dignity, knowing that there is purpose in the struggle. If you do not trust in something greater, then you will become bitter. You will look at the suffering of the world and see only meaninglessness. You will look at your own failures and see only defeat. But if you trust, if you believe that the path you walk is part of something greater, you will find the strength to continue. And in the end, that is what will separate you from those who fall. Faith is not passive, it requires action. This is something people misunderstand all the time. They think faith is about sitting back and hoping things will work out, about waiting for a miracle, about trusting that life will somehow align in their favor without any real effort on their part. But that's not faith. That's complacency disguised as virtue. Real faith is an active force. It is not just belief, it is the courage to move forward despite uncertainty, despite fear, despite suffering. If you truly have faith in something, whether it be in God, in a higher moral order, or in the meaningfulness of existence, you must act as if that faith is real. You cannot simply claim to believe in goodness and then refuse to embody it. You cannot say that you trust in a higher purpose and then shrink away from the responsibilities that such trust demands. Faith that is genuine is demonstrated through action, through sacrifice, through discipline. It is not something you have, it is something you live. People often say they have faith, but when tested, they reveal their doubt. They claim to believe in the power of perseverance, but the moment they encounter resistance, they quit. They say they trust that doing the right thing will lead to a better life, but when faced with a difficult moral decision, they take the easy way out. That is not faith. That is empty rhetoric. True faith is acting with integrity even when it's difficult. It is continuing to work toward your highest goal even when there is no guarantee of success. It is standing firm in your values even when the world tries to shake them. Faith is not about certainty, it is about commitment. You will never have absolute proof that your actions will lead to the outcome you desire. No one can guarantee that your sacrifices will pay off in exactly the way you hope. But that is precisely why faith is necessary. It is the bridge between the known and the unknown. It is the force that allows you to take the next step, even when the full path is hidden from view. To have faith is to live as if meaning exists, as if your actions matter, as if the struggle is worth enduring. And the paradox is that when you live this way, you make it true. If you act as though your efforts are meaningful, they become meaningful. If you move forward despite uncertainty, you create the very opportunities you could not initially see. This is how faith transforms reality. It compels action, and through action, it reshapes the world. So, if you claim to have faith, prove it. Step forward when fear tells you to step back. Speak the truth when it would be easier to stay silent. Do the right thing even when no one is watching. Faith is not a passive hope, it is an active choice, and that choice must be made every single day. Carrying the heaviest burden you can bear is not just a path to fulfillment, it is the only path. People search endlessly for happiness, for meaning, for something that will give their lives a sense of purpose. They think they will find it in comfort, in pleasure, in the avoidance of suffering. But that's an illusion. Real fulfillment does not come from making life easier, it comes from making yourself stronger. And the only way to do that is to voluntarily take on responsibility, to shoulder a burden so great that it forces you to grow in ways you never imagined. Life is suffering. That is an undeniable fact. No one escapes hardship. No one avoids struggle. The question is not whether you will suffer, the question is whether your suffering will have meaning. And that meaning is found in responsibility. When you take on a heavy burden, when you dedicate yourself to something greater than your own immediate desires, you transform suffering into purpose. You stop being a victim of life's inevitable hardships and instead become someone who can bear them, someone who can take those hardships and use them to create something meaningful. Look at the people you admire most. Are they the ones who chose the easy road? The ones who avoided responsibility? Of course not. You admire those who sacrificed, who endured, who took on challenges that others were unwilling to face. The greatest among us are those who willingly accept the heaviest burdens, not because they have to, but because they know that in doing so they become something more. They transcend their limitations. They rise above their suffering. They transform themselves into people capable of withstanding life's chaos and helping others do the same. And this isn't just a moral statement, it's a psychological and practical truth. If you shrink away from responsibility, if you refuse to bear a burden, your life becomes small. You become weak. You become resentful. You start looking for someone to blame for your lack of purpose. But if you take on responsibility, if you decide to be the one who steps up, who works hard, who does what is necessary, your life expands. You grow in competence, in resilience, in wisdom. You become someone who can face the suffering of life and not be broken by it. This is not to say that burden bearing is easy. It is incredibly difficult. It requires sacrifice, discipline, and constant effort. But the alternative is far worse. A life without responsibility is a life without direction. And a life without direction leads to nihilism, to despair, to bitterness. If you want to avoid that fate, the answer is clear. Pick up the heaviest burden you can carry and move forward with it. Make yourself accountable. Strive towards something difficult but worthwhile. Because in the end, the weight you carry is not just a burden, it is the very thing that gives your life depth, significance, and ultimately fulfillment. So, what does all of this mean? It means that your life is in your hands in ways that are far more profound than you might realize. It means that the obstacles you face, the fears that hold you back, the suffering you endure, these are not just random misfortunes. They are the trials that shape you. They are the fires in which strength, character, and meaning are forged. And the only way forward, the only way to build a life worth living is to confront them willingly. Dream big because the alternative is stagnation. Take responsibility because the weight you carry defines you. Overcome yourself because your greatest enemy is within. Trust in something greater because you are not enough on your own. Act on your faith because belief without action is nothing. And carry the heaviest burden you can bear because in doing so, you will find not only resilience but purpose. You are not meant for an easy life. You are meant for a meaningful one. And meaning is something you must earn. So stand up straight, speak the truth, face the chaos, and move forward despite everything. If you do that, if you truly commit to it, then you will become something far greater than you are now. And that is not just a possibility, it is a moral obligation.